All games are RPGs, a video topic courtesy of Tesnickerer. Every video game is a role-playing game, but how did it get this way? When people originally coined the term role-playing game, they never meant that it is literally a game where one plays a role. Essentially, they meant a game that has statistics that refer to traits. Those statistics were then used to express the personality and ability of a character, a la Dungeons & Dragons. The gamer would then play as the character to perform the roles of the character as if performing a play. And while games had been used to tell stories and express meanings before, see the anti-mutually assured destruction theory of Missile Command, or the anti-feudal, anti-capitalist origins of Monopoly, the landlord's game, RPGs brought a new level of story and personal relatability to video games that hadn't been experienced before. You see, video games go through seasons. Certain games become the standard of what it means to be a gamer. Today we have the free-to-play team-based multiplayer hero shooter, wherein players control one of a variety of characters with unique statistics and cooperate to defeat an opposing team doing the same. These games developed out of the popularity of Overwatch, which created the competitive hero shooter by pulling game design ideas from Borderlands, a story-driven RPG FPS they called a hero shooter, League of Legends, a MOBA game in which unique characters cooperate to capture points on a map to destroy the opposing team's home base, and Call of Duty. I will get to Call of Duty in a moment. Parallel to this, to the competitive hero shooter era, has also been the battle royale shooter era, this being spearheaded by two main franchises, PUBG and Fortnite. These games see large numbers of individuals competing to be the last person standing in massive single-player competitive first-person shooter, third-person shooter games with a rapidly shrinking arena to compete within. This game design was invented drawing inspiration from the film Battle Royale and other such inspired YA dystopian fiction such as The Hunger Games and Maze Runner and The Giver. Okay, so is it okay for me to include The Giver in this list? Do people even remember this book enough to get a joke about The Giver? Anyways, in these games, arguably, people don't play as characters, just avatars to facilitate the shooter experience. Let me ask you, if that were true, why do these games want desperately to get you to think you are playing as a character? Fortnite started development as a hero shooter before it pivoted after seeing PUBG skyrocket to the top of Twitch.tv. Fortnite constantly promotes itself with crossover brand synergy with the most beloved characters in media: Spider-Man, Naruto, Goku, Thanos, Rainbow Dash, and Nancy Drew. PUBG wants you to feel like you are in a narratively gritty, hardcore dystopia. They published an official tie-in webcomic to make that happen. I read it. It wasn't bad. 8 out of 10 pubs. The centrality of these genres in the gamer zeitgeist follow the previous era, the first-person shooter the FPS competitive shooter. I was a little redundant there. Call of Duty and Battlefield are the main titles in this area. The main gameplay modes are characterless competitions where players are put on teams to compete against each other. Even though you are on teams, these games are often feature fast turnaround between death and respawns, and feature more focus on individual performance than team coordination. And yet, most of these games come with story modes that present fictitious military fantasies of powerful soldiers who can do no wrong. These games go hard on selling you the idea that you are the character of a boots on the ground super soldier with both a heart of gold and true ambivalence to hoity-toity reasoned out ethics, even going as far as to make a deep fake of Ronald Reagan to sell the fantasy of going after a proven fictitious Cold War era spy that was invented by Senator Joseph McCarthy's anti-leftist disinformation campaign, wherein he just actively lied about every single one of his political rivals being a secret communist sent by the Soviets to destroy America. It was so bad that the term McCarthyism entered the lexicon of political science and political philosophy, and in Call of Duty, Black Ops, Cold War, you get to pretend that the fantasy that all those lies were about are true, and only you, a powerful conservative with a gun that yells they're shooting civilians to cover your ass while you actively pretend that the conspiracy was real, can save the day. Even the non-role-playing powerhouse Call of Duty wants you to associate your team deathmatch with actual emotionally resonant character drama. Before then, gamer theater's center stage was occupied by the 3D platformer, Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, Sonic, Mario, Banjo and Kazooie, Spyro the Dragon, Nathan Drake, and Bubsy. These games were defined by finding new ways to make moving through a 3D environment an engaging experience, usually by adding guns. While in one breath we focus on the movement gameplay of jumping on stuff, in the next we recall the other name for the genre the name of the genre, the mascot platformer. Mario, the fun-loving everyman. Sonic, the fun-loving bad boy who doesn't care about your rules. Jak, the fun-loving silent protagonist that talks to a weasel and then gets really edgy once he learns how to talk at age 27. Sly Cooper, the fun-loving suave thief who definitely wasn't my furry awakening. Gex, the fun-loving gecko that definitely isn't James Bond and definitely wasn't my furry awakening. Croc, a fun-loving crocodile who is a crocodile, and definitely was not my furry awakening. And Donkey Kong. He has a family now. You also have a family, just like Donkey Kong. #relatable. Okay, admittedly, mascot platformer characters were not often inspired character designs, but not inspired characters with deep and relatable motivations. They were, however, perfectly suited for relating to the kinds of things children care about when playing a video game. Basically being fun-loving. For now, I'm going to skip over the popularity of flight sims and music sims and real-time strategy, but obviously Ace Combat Guitar Hero and StarCraft were all about character-driven stories as well and had their own moments in the sun. Yet before the reign of the platformer around the gamer campfire, everyone was playing RPGs. Final Fantasy and Dragon's Quest in Japan, Baldur's Gate, Fallout, and Diablo in Europe and the US. Real gamers showed off their street cred by playing even the most obscure RPG titles like Xenogears and Secret of Mana. The RPG hype train reached its fever pitch with the release of Final Fantasy VII, with its absolutely decadent 3D CGI cutscenes and story of unheard of vastness sprawling 3 whole discs. Though the Final Fantasy franchise would recognize its role of being a gameplay surrogate for the character dramas of the theater most explicitly in Final Fantasy VI's Opera House scene. It seems no matter how far back we go in the history of video games, we will find characters and stories. I recently asked my mutual writer friends what they thought was the most important factor in writing good modern fiction. Nearly all of them replied that strong character writing was the most important. A story's theme, setting, and tonality can all be described through good characters, but none of those things will make a character emotionally relatable to an audience. Without that ability to connect, there is no story for the reader. No matter how far back you go in the history of video games, the centrality of creating story through characters and allowing players to embody those characters in some fashion is at the core of the appeal of playing a game at all. When people say something is an RPG, they mean so much more than the characters or the statistics that relate to the concept. They are hearkening towards certain experiences that they had as players of games and the myriad of systems that facilitated those experiences even outside of the prescribed stories that were written in the script. Maybe any number of alternate terms like character statistics game or turn-based interactive stories would be more appropriate, yet we must remember why the RPG was made to begin with. The use of the statistics were meant as a guide toward connecting us with characters and more personally relating to those experiences. RPGs call back to the very fundamental character of play, in which we take something in the world, observe it, imagine the possibilities, and then see if we can make those possibilities real. We as players are the original character, and we will use play to connect to the world of characters that surround us. Stay true.